Hi, I'm Britton LaRue, and this is Moon to Moon. Moon to Moon is a space to consider, celebrate, and share the ways we come home to ourselves, anchor through change, and uncover our power. 1 month, one phase, one loving step at a time. Dear Moon to Moon, it's Britton, and I'm bringing you the Unshaming the Ninth House episode inside the series Unshaming the Houses that I started back in Leo season. So we've been at it a while here. I hope that you're enjoying these. I know that I am. It just warms my heart to hear from those of you who are feeling really seen and supported by so many of these episodes. I'm really proud of it as a project, and I love where it's taking me. And I am very proud of this conversation I'm about to share with you today. You may hear some heaviness in my voice. I'm recording this in advance of publishing on Wednesday, the day after the election, and performing positivity is not very accessible today. Our bodies, like my daughters, my teen daughter slept in my bed with me for the first time in years. Up through the night with my daughters, these bodies unable to sleep, This whole thing takes their bodies back to some really rough years of their childhood. And I hadn't really thought about that when I was going to bed last night. I was thinking about my own body. Like, will I be able to sleep this night? So, feeling all the feelings. And allowing that to be in the record here, in this introduction to this really, really heart-led conversation with Heidi. Heidi Rose Robbins is my guest astrologer for the ninth house. I wanted Heidi to come because Heidi has a ninth house sun and a ninth house Saturn. And I knew that. I've known Heidi a long time now. I had the luck and the privilege and the synchronicity to be connected to Heidi very early in my astrological career. I found out that she had attended SMU here in Dallas, and that's where I got my master's in art history. And I was like, I'm just gonna reach out to Heidi Rose Robbins as a young astrologer, baby astrologer, say hello. Maybe she'll respond. Maybe she'll say hi to me. And, I really admire my younger self for being so brave. And I told her about myself and said I made these workbooks. This was back in 2020. And Heidi was so gracious and welcomed me onto her podcast, The Radiance Project. And I felt very held in awe of Heidi as a mentor, as someone who is also a mother, an astrologer, and an artist, a poet. So Heidi and I share our different chart similarities. We have several interesting overlaps in our chart. And over these years now, there's just a real affection that blossomed between us. A lot of respect is here in this friendship. And just so honored that Heidi said yes. Heidi said yes immediately as soon as I asked. That willingness to say yes, is just, that is a spirit that lights up this world, saying yes. And opening the doors to relationship. It's just really beautiful. Thank you, Heidi. So let me read Heidi's bio in case the name Heidi Rose Robbins is new for you. Heidi Rose Robbins has been a professional astrologer for 25 years, helping thousands of clients all over the globe live with more authenticity and clarity. She hosts 2 podcasts, The Radiance Project, featuring poetry, astrology, and good company, and Chart Your Career with co-host Ellen Fondler. Twice a year, she leads Radiant Life retreats for people wishing to take a deeper dive into her work. She is also a guest faculty member at Esalen in Big Sur, California. Heidi has written 2 books of poetry, This Beckoning Ceaseless Beauty and Wild Compassion, and has been a featured poet on 2 TEDx events. Her 12-book series, The Zodiac Love Letters, was published by One Idea Press, and last year her new book, Everyday Radiance, based on her daily Instagram offerings, was published by Chronicle. So links to connect to Heidi are in the show notes. So the ninth house is a really big one in my life. Because it includes spirituality, but it also includes academia, which are both huge zones of exploration for me. Let me read the significations: religion and spirituality, higher knowledge, wisdom, philosophy, long journeys, distant places, unfamiliar territory, pilgrimages, foreign travel, multicultural interests, visions, dreams, oracles, prophets, astrologers, dream interpreters, law, higher education, academia, the abstract mind. I especially encourage, now that we're in the second half of the houses, for all y'all, if you really resonate with an episode, I invite you to go check out the polar one too. Like, I would really love to invite listeners to listen to this with the third house, Unshaming the Third House with Suprasensory Shahir, the second house, 8th house as a polarity, first house, 7th, and so on. These are polarities. And so there's something sort of incomplete about each one. It's like, of course, it's a whole system and they all need each other, but the polarities are really powerful. So encouraging you, if you find a lot of really powerful nuggets here, to also be sure to check out the third house episode, because I think that will also really resonate with you if this one does. So without further ado, inviting you to enjoy my conversation with the very radiant Heidi Rose Robbins. Welcome back to Moon, Heidi Rose Robbins.
Yay. I'm so happy to be here with you, Britton.
Thank you. I was reflecting that you were one of my first guests ever. I guess that was winter 2021. You came on and we talked about the element of fire.
Yes, I remember that. I feel like watching you has been so amazing because everything feels like accelerated or something. 21 doesn't sound that far away. And yet, like you are just, it's just been beautiful to witness the unfolding of emergence astrology. I'll put it that way.
Oh, thank you. I remember that when I saw that you went to SMU here in Dallas, I just found the audacity to ask if I could send you some of my workbooks. And I'll always be grateful that you said yes. And I think you invited me on your podcast then. And it
Yeah.
just felt, um, it just felt so amazing as a young astrologer to have someone say yes.
Absolutely.
And connect with your wisdom. I'll tell listeners before we started recording, we were reflecting on how we have an exact Heidi's Mercury is exactly at my sun at 1338 Pisces, which is pretty wild.
It's such a beautiful conjunction. And I was reflecting to Britton that I just love the way she writes. I love the way you write because it's just full of how I like to understand something. It's full of poetry, it's full of depth, it's full of mystery, it's full of unveiling. I feel like there's always an unveiling in your writing. And I also can always feel you thinking deeper, like yeah, don't stop there, let's get a little further into the mystery, right? So I always so deeply appreciate. I'm like, oh, what's she gonna share with us this time?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we both have the Capricorn moon. Yeah, I feel that in so much in your commitment to moon notes and the things that you just keep coming back to. That like, I love this so much. I'm going to go all the way with it. Kind of commitment, this devotion. Mm.
Well, I was feeling jealous of your Capricorn moon actually sextile your sun versus square your sun, which is what I was like, ooh, what would it feel to have a Capricorn moon sextile your sun? Yum, maybe that Capricorn moon would be a little softer, or but I think you're pretty driven. I think you're pretty driven.
Yeah, I really am. I think unshaming that has been a journey. I always felt like uh, expressing my drive was, I don't know, like not elegant or something. Like it clashed with another part of me that wanted to be visible,
Yeah.
and letting them just coexist has been a real midlife game changer.
You're doing it. You're doing it. I can feel it from out here.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming to talk about Unshaming the Ninth House.
I'm so happy to explore this with you.
Yeah, I would love to hear you share how you bring people into the ninth house, how you invite them to recognize the ninth house in their lives.
Yeah, yeah. I think of the ninth house as a house of wisdom and a house of deep understanding and a house of synthesizing all the knowledge that we gather in the third house. And I think I often think of the ninth house as such a place of encouragement and vision. Step into this house and dream a new dream, step into this house and expand your horizons. But I think I guess I think, and of course, the teachers that broaden our perspective, and ourselves as teachers and what we have to offer. And I guess I think of the biggest thing about the ninth house is it's somehow allowing us to unify our cosmology. It's having us create our own worldview. That's what it's asking us. It's like, after you've done all this research and all studied all these things, what's your worldview? How do you see the world? That's a beginning, at least.
Oh,
I get a little Aries when I first start and I say too many things, but
no,
we'll slow
we are
down
in
now.
now. We are in the room. Yes. So I know that you've been like astrology's been in your life pretty much your whole life, would you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So have you always carried the identity of ninth house sun? Or like, do you remember not having an identity as ninth house sun?
Well, let's just say, like, I'd like to sort of say right off that my sun and Saturn are in the ninth house in Aries. And my father was an astrologer and very huge influence in my life. And so I think in many ways it was always from the get-go. My father was cast as is a way as the sun in the ninth house. In fact, his son was in the ninth house.
Mm.
So my journey, I think, has been and continues to be, friends, no matter how old you get, continues to be, what is my house of wisdom? What is my cosmology? What is my understanding? Because I I am, and well, I'm not even going to say that. I was my father's daughter in the lineage of astrology, and but there's something afoot, right? And so I think part of the what's fascinating that you invited me to talk about Unshaming the ninth house is, what does it really mean to be my own unique blend? What does it really mean to have my own cosmology? What does it really mean to say, what have I understood in all these years? What am I just parroting? And what have I really understood? So, that's a big thing.
Wow. Yes. And
Yeah,
it's your chart ruler as a Leo rising.
exactly.
So it's like,
Exactly.
Heidi, we'd like you to pay attention to this, said your
Yeah.
chart.
And Saturn's is conjunct the sun. So to
Mhm.
disentangle that or to own it in a new way, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Have there been particular transit periods that have felt like, oh, I'm really invited into this right now?
Yeah, I would say I feel one coming because I'll be having my second Saturn return. And does it hit for the first time in 2025 or I should know? I'm like, is it
2025,
26?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then early
Mhm.
2026. So yeah, because it's gonna, yes. Anyway, so but in 2013, I had Uranus on my sun. And I would say starting then, I began to carve out a path of freedom or a path of reinvention around what it really means for me to have Saturn conjunct the sun in the ninth house. And I wrote a poem at that time called "I Can No Longer Be Contained," which is so ninth
Oh,
house, and it's so Uranian, right? I can no longer be contained, and it's one of my favorite poems. Because it really captured the energy of Uranus on the sun, and I began to set myself free. Now, did have I fully felt free over the last 11 years? No, it's such a process. But I think with this coming Saturn return, I feel myself ready to claim something in my interior life that may or may not affect what it looks like on the outside, but to to claim something about how I see the world after all these ninth house adventures, ninth house studies, you know, ninth house expansive experiences.
yeah. And then I guess probably 9 months to a year later, Saturn will come to your sun, which
Yes,
will
yes.
have similar themes, I imagine, just a little different.
Yeah, the last times I had my first Saturn return, we were talking about your first Saturn return too. my first Saturn return, two things happened that I remember. I got terribly ill because I had been sort of ignoring my body. And it was like, I got terribly ill for 5 days. It was like a terrible flu or something. But I also directed Hamlet at Interlochen Arts Camp. And it was one of the most successful productions I'd ever directed, and probably to this day, and it was this high point in terms of my vision, my directorial vision in a way. And so I love to think about what happened with the first go around, and what's possible and how those themes might continue, or so we'll see in a bit.
I know it helps me with Saturn on my sun this past year, to feel into like what would I like that to feel like. Yeah, I don't know if that brings up anything for you, but like what would it feel like, or what would you like that to feel like?
Yeah, I would like to feel I love Carolyn Casey, how she would always say, Saturn allows us to be the author of our lives, right? And I think I would just like to give myself more and more and more permission to stand in what I know is the next chapter for me. And that might be something radical, that might be something that isn't about taking on more responsibility and becoming the teacher in a different way. Maybe it's like, I'll see you in a couple of years. I'm going to go write a book, or I'm going to disappear. Or, I love Sarah Stover once closed down her entire business for a year and a half. She just said, and that was a complicated thing to do, but she said, I need to do that. So all of those things are possibilities, just allowing that feeling like, what is it time for? And really answering honestly. And not pleasing. And you're great about naming this. It's like not doing this to please anyone, not doing this because it's expected, not doing this because you've climbed this far. Why don't you climb a little further? Just because you can. Should you? No, I don't think so.
Whoa. I was getting shivers as you were speaking.
Yeah. In whenever this happens, just play this back for me, Britton.
Yes.
Just be like, Heidi.
I'm going to slide this over. And I'm also making a mental note, if you would be open to sharing the poem that you mentioned. I could read it in the intro or the outro or something like this.
Oh, absolutely. I've got it somewhere. I got it over there. I mean, it's a very Uranian poem, but it also, I guess it's a very Sagittarius poem. I think about the ninth house often in such positive terms. There are houses that are much easier to shame than the ninth house. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the ninth house somehow, it's like, be free, go on adventures, travel the world, say yes, So I was like, okay, let's think, whereas some other, like the sixth house, the eighth house, they're easier to shame.
Yeah. And I have Sagittarius at my ninth house. So, and Neptune there, it has felt very much like a boundaryless space for me, but so many individuals come into my community who have experienced religious trauma, which I feel like I would put there.
Yes.
And I always had, my parents were just very open. So I felt free. I was always a spiritually inclined person and always navigated that without feeling like I owed anybody a discussion. Like I went separate from my ex-husband. I went separate from what my parents did. But I did feel a kind of spiritual lineage that only now in my mystical life I'm really understanding. But I'm really grateful for that because for so many, I feel that there's like some of the deepest pain of their life comes from the shame that can come from dogmatic structures and like certainty culture and
Yeah.
institutions that tell you they're not telling you yes go explore you
Yes,
know
yes, yes, yes.
and I do feel liberated in exploring, but I will tell you that when I came into astrology, I did go through some self-silencing with certain networks and certain groups that I hadn't known that part of myself to self-silence, but it was sort of like, this means a lot to me, and I don't know that you're going to appreciate or understand the beauty of what this is. So I just am going to presume you don't want to hear it or you're going to judge it. So I felt that come up more in me since I've found astrology and been active with astrology. And I did find astrology when Saturn was moving through Sagittarius, interestingly.
Ah, yeah. No, that's all beautifully said and absolutely true. And I haven't heard the phrase certainty culture before, but that's actually a great phrase. Um, yeah, I mean, the danger, the shame, the pain of the ninth house can have so much to do with that fundamentalism. This is the only way. And, in some ways, I could even say of my upbringing, with Saturn there and my father being such an influence, and because I loved him so much, there was a part of me that was like, this is the only way. And, but it was like, this is the only way in a metaphysical, esoteric realm, right? So it's kind of complicated because there's so much freedom in the ageless wisdom and that worldview, and yet there was also a this is the only way that I can feel myself needing to unpack. And it was never dangerous for me. I was never traumatized, by it, but I can feel into that place of the the zealotry, the zealotry of this is it. And so I do think there's a huge unshaming around, the permission to explore the many ways and yeah, the permission to find your own way and to like gently lower the blinders that were put on for you or that you put on out of survival mode,
Yeah. Yeah, it can feel, I suppose it can feel something like crisis to take the blinders down. um, which is why sometimes we just choose not to go exploring. It's like, what is it going to mean if I don't fully believe in this anymore? What is it going to mean to my belonging with the other believers?
Yeah, it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. Um, and it's very easy to layer on a certain shame around it. It's like there's some beautiful books in the Alice Bailey tradition, which is what my father, taught. And there's two books called Discipleship in the New Age, and it's basically the Tibetan teacher Djwhal Khul talking to his students who he was working with at the time. And there's a brilliant mind and a brilliant heart there. But what I laugh about is there were certain students that he would be writing with, and all the letters are there. And then at the end of some of them, they would say, this student left the teaching as he was unable to complete the assignments or unable to meet and so it's clearly every time you're like, oh, they failed, they couldn't do it, they couldn't hack it, they couldn't, whatever they needed. So there is something about you better buckle up and follow the way and be a good spiritual student. Yeah, there's something about unshaming this idea of what it is to be a good spiritual student.
Ugh.
Oh, makes me,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, I bet you see this in your many circles that I feel like a lot of there's like what I'm ostensibly teaching, and what part of what I'm actually teaching is like unlearning the rigidities around what being a student even means. Like getting behind, not getting it, doing it wrong, and like the fear that you're um there's this longing to connect to the chart, but this sometimes there can be this sense of how that it's hard and you're not going to be able to get it. And it's just not the same kind of learning, when you're learning astrology.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think you're inviting people into a really interesting process, where it's not like, I'm going to teach you the planets and it feels like you're approaching it from a much more, I don't even know, like it's not intuitive, but it's also a wider lens. It's a ninth house lens. It's like, let's open up and not just isolate certain positions, but start big in a way. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
speaking for you, and you could clearly articulate what you're doing much better.
Yeah.
But it
No,
does
thank
feel,
you.
different than like, let's be the good students, let's get out our notebooks, and let's begin at the beginning, kind of thing.
Yes. I mean, it's paradoxical in the sense that I do think with any wisdom tradition that the more you practice and the more you show up and the more you devote yourself to learning, the more you'll be pleased with all that you're learning, right? So um it's like I think that the Saturnian sometimes can feel so intense. Um there's like a fear around all discipline, and I feel like part of my Capricorn moon process has been like honoring that I am a person of discipline. Actually, it would be out of alignment to not pretend that I'm not.
Right.
um, I do think the word devotion feels more gentle to many, um, but it's also discipline.
Yeah, and to own the beauty of the discipline, but also to not let it ultimately rule us somehow. I mean, the reason why I'm disciplined is because I want to get to a place where, like, I've done the work, and then, it's like writing the syllabi and throwing it away, writing the syllabus and throwing it away, and that's what I've done
Mm.
all along. I don't always throw it away. For many years, I just did exactly what I planned. But I think I've been making my way to this place where what is meant to happen in this moment? And we've prepared and prepared and prepared. And now we surrender to more of the magic of it.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, I'm curious if you feel like a devotion like something like your moon notes would fall, like which house does it feel like it belongs to for you?
I think it falls in, like, I think it's my Capricorn moon in the fifth house in some ways. It's showing up for a creative task, and my moon also borders the sixth house in Placidus system.
Mhm.
So so it's a little bit of both of the fifth house and the sixth house. It's the artistry and it's the daily labor.
Mhm.
Um, But isn't it interesting? It's so fascinating to feel how shame creeps into everything. Like, if I were going to shame myself around the moon notes, I'd say, well, great, you've shown up every day, but it's so simple. It's just so simple it's like you're simplifying something that's such a ninth house world. And, so I could, there's always a way. Isn't it funny how we find a way to minimize or shame what we're doing, even when it's such a beautiful thing that we're doing, you know?
So true. Sweet humans.
Crazy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I would
Yeah.
say, I think so. I think probably, but I also love the feeling of community around the moon notes too. I love the quiet, like energetic community. So it's got to be somewhere
Mm.
there too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it feels like um that um trine between, I mean, by house, between the fifth and the ninth, then it's like your creative process is in connection to your cosmology in a way that feeds your creative life and it provides teachings.
Yes, yes, and that's my favorite thing to do.
So great. Yeah. Yeah. It feels like I'm curious to feel into like your some of the distinctions you have between, you mentioned gathering in the third house, like some, I know divination is often connected to both the third and the ninth. I'm
Yeah.
curious how you see the polarity between those houses. And
Yeah, I was just thinking where I just came across it in Dane Rudyard's book about the houses the other day, and he was just I think he mentioned that Einstein has Jupiter in the ninth house, Jupiter and Aquarius in the ninth house, and um, I guess the third house for me is always the collection of the information, the data, the learning, the student, the bridge building, and then the ninth house is like is the great synthesizer of all that information. It's the abstract mind. It's the perspective, and all the data becomes in some ways much smaller in that great world view. So, and I think it is interesting the whole idea of the ninth house as the kind of like I would even say let's unshame the prophetic visions, let's unshame those that can see something that isn't scientifically proven, do you know?
yes,
Let's unshame the ones that have a a bigger insight that they can't necessarily tell you exactly why, right? Or here are all the specifics around A plus B equals C and then this big vision. No, I mean, sometimes it's like a download, and there are people that get downloads. So there's something concrete about the third house, and there's something much more abstract and visionary about the ninth house.
I'm so glad you brought this in because it is very true. I mean, we have whole religions that come from these miraculous events, miraculous transmissions, and the choice to believe in validating without evidence in such like the heightened poetry, the visual metaphor. Did it happen or was it a metaphor for what happened? We don't really know, but it's a beautiful story. So I'm going to accept going on a journey with this story. Like it's wild. Do you study human design at all? Have you gotten
I
into it?
just a little bit.
Oh,
My
yeah, it's
dear
like
friend, yeah.
it's so wild that it came through like this 8-day vision, or I can't remember the exact number of days, but then this whole system came forward that you can get very intimate with. But yeah, that's like a modern day miraculous download that has turned into something that people can choose to just walk through the door. So I think with unshaming there, it's like, who's going to give me permission to walk through into this portal? Because the vision is then going to take me on a journey. I don't know where this journey is going to take me. I don't really even have control over the way it seeps into me and starts to change me.
Mhm.
But there's like an inspirational piece there. I feel like where we just like have to. Um,
Yeah. I'm glad you said that word inspiration. I think that's such a key word to some it's it's almost also unshaming the pursuit of inspiration, the pursuit of joyful exploration, the pursuit of the leap, just like, I believe in this and I can't tell you why. I need this and I can't tell you why. And when we have to start telling why, things start to die, like I mean, you don't want to be foolish. You don't want to, or maybe you do. There are moments to be the fool in the tarot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think also in our culture, we shame optimism. We shame enthusiasm. We shame optimism and we
Yeah.
shame enthusiasm. And you're much better off if you're brilliant and jaded and articulate and well read and something. It's instead of just, today is a good day and I can see more than my brokenness, and there's so many journeys to go on, and I'm excited about all of them. And I mean, the ninth house really does swing the doors open and say, are you willing to look beyond what isn't working?
Yeah. Wow, that's a big one. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a surrender there, um, to choose to follow that optimistic spirit or follow that aspirational energy towards this thing, that's calling to you. Um, it reminds me of that Frozen 2 song, Into the Unknown.
Yes, yes. Oh my God, it's so ninth house. Oh, that's so good. Into the unknown.
Yeah, exactly.
I liked that
I always
song.
get teary.
That's so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like when you're just like, I'm gonna go live in this other place. I don't know how to explain it to you. I'm moving. Um, it's like from my current cosmology, just way of thinking about the spiritual life, I would think of it as like your soul is taking you places, but you don't really know the intelligence of it. You just have
Yeah.
to trust.
When you were saying I'm gonna go to this other place that I don't know, I mean, that could be very tangible on the planet, and that could be very internal and nothing to do with where you're living, right?
Exactly.
So that's why it's like the ninth house. I always, it's always the big outer journey or the inner journey. And
Mhm.
so you were articulating the inner journey there, um, which can be just as daunting to say, I'm going to this place. I it's a new place to be, and I may or may not return. Right?
Yes, I know. Yeah, I was thinking about how the association with longer journeys and like pilgrimages in the ancient world, like that was a huge risk. I mean, like involving like who knows what? Like how are you gonna make it back? Lots of hardship, sacrifice. Um, And because it's a cadent house, it's my understanding that the cadent houses has pretty liminal spaces because you're sort of between and it's sort of like not the rest of the regular life that some of the other houses point to. Because it is like that spiritual or conceptual or abstract um journey that you can go on.
Yeah, that's great. And it's so interesting because now, it's the very rare journey on the planet that is as scary as it was, like the physical journey, like you could go to Antarctica or something, or, but it's rare that you'd be like, I'm setting off. I don't know if I'll return in a physical journey, so now
Yes.
we've taken it to this, now there's something else. There's a different kind of journey beckoning, right? And, or we're underway with a different kind of journey. And I think the spiritual journey is what it's all about right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thinking of it as the house where the sun rejoices, it's like being able to see more or something like this, like more becomes illuminated through that soul quest. And so who's going to give you permission? Like, I think that's where shame comes in, because from studying shame now, one of the three main consequences is feeling like you don't have permission to just whatever, give yourself a boundary, go ahead and do it. This permission piece is can be one that you're noticing that the unshaming is working when you notice you're giving yourself more permission than you had been.
That's so good. Yes, 100%. I'm thinking about another poem that I wrote called
Yeah.
Freedom Yet to Find, and it was such a ninth house poem, because it's like, if there is a scrap, swath, something of freedom, put me on that course, put me on that plane, I'm going to go after it. This feeling of permission to go after a greater expanse of self, permission to expand through whatever means. Yeah, I love that. I love how you put it.
I'm really feeling the fact of you having Aries there. Just like, get out of my way. I'm going.
and yet, Britain, and yet there's the Saturn. So this is the dilemma. I can sometimes speak about like what I'm going to do, or what we should all do, or how blah, blah, blah. And then Saturn's like, and you're not going to do it, or, whatever, like, it's just shame creeps in, or the hesitation creeps in, or the reality creeps in. So it is definitely a huge dance in the ninth house for me. And yes, it's getting better. And yes, the Sun and Saturn are integrating more and all of that. But it's a little bit of foot on the brake, foot on the gas in terms of permission.
Yes. Thank you for naming that. Do you see that with this kind of story of ninth house permission with others who have Saturn in the ninth that you've held space for, or that
Yeah, I think what I experience sometimes, I mean, we've talked a little bit about some of the traumas that come with sometimes Saturn in the ninth house, but on another level, I would say I often find that clients with this position have a hesitation around dreaming a bigger dream, or a hesitation around allowing themselves to even imagine taking a risk, or also sometimes Saturn ninth house, we put such a importance on higher education and your degrees and da, 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 da. And sometimes Saturn in the ninth house, that particular path is not for them, and they're meant to find higher education is meant to be a much broader idea, so there's either shame, or there's tests around, well, how am I going to educate myself? But I think that the opportunity is to think about higher education in a much broader way.
Yeah. My gosh. I mean, the institutions of academia are so heavy and bulky. And I really I felt free in the classroom space, but I didn't feel free within the larger institutional space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like paper to paper, I felt free, but when it began to feel into like, but what journey am I really going to go on? I sort of just felt underneath this colossal, heavy space that did not feel free.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've had experiences with a lot of clients who have a similar vibe around that, I mean, I'm glad I got my graduate degree and but I wouldn't say it was my community, that like you, it's like my people around me, the smaller classes, all of that was extraordinary. They're still some of my best friends in the world. And yet it wasn't a Jupiterian experience. It wasn't like, this is the best thing that I'm in this structure for 3 years. It was something else at work, and it was more Saturn. It was more Saturn.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, it was like, how do I carve out authority within such a place of its own authority or something like this, you know? Speaking of Saturn, right? Like,
yeah,
I just want to do what I want to do. I think that's why, I found astrology probably when Saturn was transiting my ninth. And then by the time it was going across my 10th, I was remaking my career.
yeah, yeah. And of course, how do we? There's some students that are amazing at holding their own and being their their own authority in the process, and then it's also very easy to give away your power and to be like, well, you are the
Yes.
ones that know. And I think I certainly did that, and in many ways, and that's a painful thing, and it's a long process in bringing the Saturn back to the self and reclaiming it in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm feeling here the shame consequence, which is lack of self-trust. So I see unshaming as a process of repairing um, from experiences where you lost your self-trust. And I feel like for those who felt hurt or betrayed by a teacher, um, or even like by a spiritual leader, or like people who've experienced cult situations, um, there can be this sense of not being able to trust yourself in choosing your teachers and your guides, which is a really big part of the ninth house experiences, like receiving the receiving support through mentorship and through guidance to help you grow your wisdom. So
Yeah,
I'm glad
yeah,
that came up because that's a big one.
yeah. That's really beautifully said. Yeah, and certainly, I've been doing astrology for, I don't know, 25 years or something, and my father, the people that he gathered around him, for the most part, for the bulk of the time, were all older men. So again, the Saturn sun in the ninth house. And yet I think you wrote something really beautiful, or I remember looking at something where you were talking about, isn't it interesting that you were talking about Pisces, on shaming Pisces, and you were saying, isn't it interesting that Venus is exalted in Pisces, and that it's sort of this dismissal of Venus when we dismiss Pisces. And
Mm-hmm.
you said it better, but I'm piecing that
Yes,
together.
yes.
Do you remember? I mean, do you want to put in your own words what I?
No, yeah, that was the gist of it. It's like it's my one exalted planet.
Yeah, yeah, and it's
But
true. It's
yeah.
easy. Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is the Venus, like Venus for me, is in my 10th house in Taurus, and I
Mm.
almost needed to go visit, like really live in the realm of Venus before I could return to the Sun Saturn in the ninth house and claim my own teaching in a way other than the one that I was exposed
Oh,
to. Does that make
wow.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like receive those resources. Um, it seems like it's like pulling resources from a very different part of you,
Yes. Yeah.
to validate the Venusian that wanted to move through your teachings or
Yes.
something. Is that,
Yes. Yes. The
yeah.
Venusian needed to move through needs to be in the teaching, but my examples of what it is to be a spiritual teacher were very far from that, you
Mm.
know, until I mean, I did have an incredible teacher who was a woman, but she was not an astrologer. So I'm thinking purely of astrology at a certain time, and how beautiful that that's changed so significantly. But, um, something about me needing to visit Venus or be with or steep in or like love Venus to pieces in Taurus in the 10th house in order to really change the dynamic with the Sun, Saturn, Aries in the 9th. Yeah.
And I imagine, like, I'm not sure what the orb is, but infuse your Mercury in Pisces too, perhaps.
Yes, it's a sextile. Venus and Mercury are sextile there. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, may the Venus move through my mouth.
That's right. I think I feel best.
That.
Yeah, I think I feel best when Venus is moving through my mouth. That's what.
Yeah, I feel it from it's. I feel when I speak with you that, I can feel you kind of come into like a channel that has both a Pisces and a Venusian frequency, where it's like you're coming into a wave of something very poetic and evocative moving through you, and it's such a beautiful experience, and feels like must belong to what you speak in the world.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think I feel most myself in that realm, and you as a teacher, how it is when you're teaching, and you can feel when the students are with you and when they start to like need a break. And I can always feel that I've shifted perhaps more into my Saturn or something, when it's like, okay, they're most receptive to the Venus Mercury. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Recently I was like, what if I rephrase, like, what are we learning, into like, what do you feel that you're receiving? And I like the way that feels, because like, I feel like if I see students as just learning, then it's like all the pressure is on me to like pass something, right?
Yeah.
But if it's about receiving, then they're also involved in the receptivity and like what's coming up, and that can be unique to each person. And it feels for me like it's more empowering.
That's beautiful. That's beautifully said. Yeah.
So here's to the Venusian aspects of teaching. I'm curious if any of what you've been sharing here relates at all to the ways in which you weave poetry and astrology. Is that like part of your path of finding your own way, or is that not how you would conceive of it?
No, I think it is part of it. And I think, how to put this, I think my father was such a brilliant, articulate, he was a receptacle for all the minutia. Like he could hold it all, like, and bring it up at, he would say page 422 of this, blah, 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 on paragraph 3. And when he wrote one of his books, his glossary was like 200 pages or something, because he had to he made up words to articulate, philosophical concepts. And, it's just not the way that my mind works. And yet I had such an admiration for the whole realm of astrology, right? So poetry for me was a way to reach that same depth of understanding, but without all the articulating of the minutia, I guess. Like, it's like poetry bypasses things, or it cuts to the heart of the matter, and neither is better, but poetry is the way that I can do it. And so to get into it lands us in a truly, in a heart space, in a space of soul, in a space of unfolding, awakening. And we arrive there, it's through, and I love to read poetry out loud. I love to carry you with me through the rhythm, Venus and Taurus, through the listening, Mercury and Pisces. So it's definitely my way into, like, we arrive at the same place. My father would, like, it was all about identity and who am I and the mind and the head, and I was all about heart and but you arrive at the same place. You arrive at the same place. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like part of what I'm seeing there too is like your collaboration with him in a way of like filling it out with your gifts, like weaving them together creates this whole approach.
yes, and I do deeply believe now of the equality, the weight of each. I think for many years, patriarchy and spirituality, oh, that's beautiful, that's nice, I'm glad this is sort of complementing this other much more brilliant and important piece, right? I think now I think, and I think my father too would really understand and honor the both approaches. But I think for many years it was a little bit minimized, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the ways we experience shame is minimization. And especially if you really respect and value and revere where minimization comes from, it's the process of self-permission to give it your own validation.
Yeah, yeah. And it also can, we can get into the space where we're minimizing our own selves, where it's not a direct minimization, but it's
Yes.
just because of the culture and the world and the structure that we grow up in. It's like, well, this is what this looks like. And so now I'll just internalize it and I'll minimize my own self. It doesn't even have to come directly from, a person.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I think we internalize the invalidation energy from wherever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just try to understand how to be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh goodness, thank you so much for this, Heidi. Was there anything else that on the ninth house that you were like, oh, I really hope we touch on this point, or this feels really important to name?
I think we actually touched on everything that I was thinking about. I just like the idea of, I think that I'll say one more thing. I think that sometimes the word seeker gets shamed or belittled. Oh, they're just, they're shooting their arrows in all these different directions, oh, they're just endlessly seeking. But I think there's something about unshaming that, and what a beautiful thing it is to be one who wants to know, and one who hungers for experience. So,
Mm.
sometimes people come and say, oh, I just feel like I've done this and I've done that and I've done this and I've done that. And there's shame around it. But they just need a bigger container to hold that in, and look at these individual journeys as a part of something much greater. And yeah, maybe eventually it comes into a focus. But anyway, I would just say, yeah, unshaming the hunger for experience, unshaming the idea of the search and the seeker.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, it feels like that one gets minimized as like, I when are you gonna get serious or something?
Right. That's
As
better.
if it's not serious to be a seeker.
That's exactly it, Britain. When are you going to get serious? Why are you you're taking another class, Yeah. Beautifully said.
Yeah. And yeah, that feels like that energy is coming from someone shaming that in themselves. You know, they're probably resentful, and that's why they're trying to control somebody else's seeking.
Yes. Yes. They just want to go seeking themselves.
Yeah. But yeah, that's one of the ways shame can be very helpful is if we notice that we're doing it to someone else, that's a signal for what to turn around and bring it right back, because that means we're shaming ourselves. The person was just a mirror to show us that.
Yeah, no, exactly. 100%. 100%.
Well, thank you. How can listeners connect with you in your ninth house spaces and other spaces?
Thank you, Britton. Yeah, just HeidiRose.com. There's a world to uncover there, and then Instagram at Heidi Rose Robbins, and also Substack. I finally I'm sending the moon notes via Substack as well, so people have a bigger version of the moon notes. And
oh wow!
Yeah, so you can go on Substack to receive those daily in your inbox, and I think that but you'll find everything you need to know there to come and play, retreats and such. Would love to connect.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to share about coming, like winter, spring, fall, summer next year?
Yes, let's see. I'm gonna kick off in January a 5-day retreat at Esalen, and it's planets and poetry. And so we'll be doing a lot of embodiment and a lot of writing, and it's a beautiful place. And it's a great way to start the year too. I'm really encouraging everybody to think about it as a launching retreat for 2025. So that's the seed I'll plant. I'm actually really seriously thinking differently about 2025, and what we talked about earlier, some things may shift. So that's the only thing I know right now is that but that's happening in January. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you, Britton.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for bringing your wisdom and your radiance to Moon once again. Listeners, inviting you to connect to Heidi. You can find links to connect to Heidi in the show notes. If you're loving this series and you've never left a review or a rating for Moon to Moon, inviting you to do that right this moment. It's so supportive to podcasts to have reviews. It's so supportive to have ratings. It helps signal to newcomers that there's something here to try out. And so inviting you, if you enjoy receiving here, to give a little love to the podcast through a rating or review. And I also want to plug Underdog to Diva, my group mentorship container. It is beginning to fill. Early bird has passed. It is now in the final week of promo. We begin on Tuesday, November 19th, 6 months, bi-weekly live meetups, and then asynchronous Q&A opportunities on the off weeks. What we're doing together is we are dancing in the momentum of your desires for your creative business, for your practice of showing up and participating in the world, where you're navigating the marketplace reality with other human beings in exchange for money. It's basically like for biz witches, business artists, artists who do business, creatives who do business, who want a real mystical lens. This is a very Piscean lens for thinking about business. And it's also very powerful. It's very different from your usual money mindset kind of a class, or like abundance kind of a class, manifestation kind of a class, because it's coming through my lens. And my lens is the lens of a mystic, and as an astrologer, as a psychic, as a tarot reader, but I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm also an entrepreneur who doubled her income in the last year. It's just been growing and growing and growing since I started. I'm obsessed with it. I love business. I love thinking about money because money is so taboo, and it's such a place of shame, and it's such a place of pain and wound that I can't help go there because it's so taboo. And that's also part of what I offer in my courses and in my spaces as vulnerability places, and I especially want to create a home for those of you who, you may spend a lot of your time in like that leadership hat, the person who's holding the space, the person who's in charge, but we're whole beings. And there are times where we don't have all the answers, where we feel confused, where we don't know what to do, where we feel disappointed. And this is a space where we're opening up into the vulnerability of our whole selves as we're trying to navigate all this, and just figure out how to be here, showing up and participating in our creativity in the marketplace, which is a kind of a weird place. And, we have had a lot of conditioning that can make us very afraid of it and what it will do to us. So all that's included in this container. We don't shy away from anything. We go where you want to go, and you join because you trust my voice that I'm someone you want to go there with. And that's kind of the bottom line in tapping into your desire to come join us or not. It's limited to 18 humans for intimacy. 18 so you and 17 colleagues, and you may come and meet your best friends, or you may come and have more of a solo experience, but where you are able to witness and be witnessed by fellow artists, creators, entrepreneurs who are attracted to my frequency just like you are. So there's a shared resonance that everybody has. It's the resonance of whatever it is that you're liking through me, and finding other people who also have that and who also want to talk about business and money and being multidimensional human beings, navigating things like money and growth and visibility, and riding the edges of where your business is taking you as you're listening to it. So I'm really proud of it. If you resonated with this and you haven't listened to my last episode, I have this whole episode devoted to that. So inviting you to go there and check that out if your interest is piqued. If you're listening to this after we've begun, November 19th, I'll be doing this again starting in May, and we'll go to Scorpio season in 2025. So just join my newsletter, and then you can be updated whenever I'm offering a new doorway to come learn with me. I have lots of different doorways. It's really about attuning to the one or to the ones, because many people join multiple of my containers. It's about going towards the ones that you feel really drawn to, and that's usually going to feel like a resonance in your body, like a yes in your body that may not be super explainable because it's coming from an intuitive and felt place, maybe less than like a logical place. And inviting you to trust that voice and follow it to the doorway. I'll see you there. Send me any questions if you want clarifications about anything that has to do with any of my upcoming courses. Thank you so much. Wishing you all the best. I'll see you at the 10th house episode. Very excited for that one.